is within Japan. It's keeping the Japan time. So as long as you're dealing with the Japanese in Japan, Japan time is fine. So, but why is it pervasive? And I think it's because, and I've spoken to many of my colleagues in Japan, that unless you're faced with that, individually faced with that competition of time outside of Japan, which today is easier to feel it if you use the technology and the internet and otherwise. But unless you personally have that experience, it's very difficult for people who have lived in Japan, have succeeded in that environment, to really sense that difference. So again, I think there's an opportunity. So those are the 3 obstacles that I wanted to share with you. I mean, again, there are many others, but just to stay focused on how we can turn the obstacles into opportunities and actually come up with some, as Wallace said, some actionable items. So what are the opportunities? First, on education, and I apologize for becoming very local, but the critical thinking, or I would also call it as, there are different tools that one can use to do this, but there's a notion that was developed, I think, I could be wrong, at Stanford University in Design Lab called design thinking. And if you Google design thinking, actually you get to the Stanford website on design thinking, so it's actually good. And the design thinking is something that is developed by David Kelly at Stanford Engineering School. And it's really collaborative thinking, brainstorming, rapid prototyping, sort of destroying your own idea and move on to new ideas, and sort of do a lot of that in volume and very quick time frame. And establish the framework of thinking, and not just for physical design, but all kinds of thinking. So novelists can apply this, engineers can apply this. It applies to every field. This school has collaborated with a school called the Nueva School, which is K-12 school in Silicon Valley, to implement this design thinking among the K through 12 students. And so Stanford students and Stanford professors benefit from observing those kids, and the kids benefit from them. Now, I think the similar alliance of the university and middle schools and between the U.S. and Japan, I think this has been mentioned in the last day and a half, but I think intangibly, specifically, the Stanford can expand that with, University of Kyoto, which they already have things, and Nueva has Doshisha and that other. So, but I think we can really expand this model, and it doesn't have to be Stanford and Nueva. Another thing is, I think this also, maybe I'm just repeating other people, but I assure you that I thought about this before. Another thing is this exchange, and then I will take it farther, exchange of either teachers, students, entrepreneurs, business people in general. But I think when I see entrepreneurs in Japan and entrepreneurs here, there are many things that are different in terms of resources, finance being one, but I think that is a very complex issue, why there are fewer successful venture capital firms in Japan versus the US. I think that's a very complex issue, but I think that people-to-people level, one thing we can do is mentoring. I think in Silicon Valley, there are so many potential for former successful, 3-time serial entrepreneurs to mentor newly minted entrepreneurs. And there's the food chain. There's the ecosystem that has established in the last 30 years. In Japan, that doesn't exist, or it's very little. So using the technology, we can have mentoring program. And I think this mentoring program has worked very well in other field, in education especially. I think that could work in entrepreneurship world as well, across Japan and U.S. And for that matter, I think the lunch, included China, and why not, the triad mentorship program. Another thing that I would also like to say, because I have personally invited some Japanese teachers to American school, to the Nueva, to experience some of the teaching environment. And I realized that the Kyoiku Inkai, or the prefectural educational bureau, or the district, varies a great deal in terms of its progressiveness or acceptance or openness to have their teachers go outside of their own domain to learn things. And so if we can, again, to be very practical and operational driven, if we can pick prefectures that are very keen on education and open to outside views and ways of doing things, I think we can really target those. And once, the good news about this sort of business-minded approach is, as long as you do anything that is measurable, and once you report the measure of success, and especially and included in Japan, I think people follow. And I think that's so. You need some very strong key successes in major, few very major areas, and I think that sort of the ripple effect is potentially huge. And the second sort of opportunities that I see is use of technology. I think Wallace mentioned the small to mid-sized companies' vibrant existence in Japan, and I really completely agree with that. And it is very difficult, and believe me, I tried, to move large lions of Japanese corporations. And then there are spots of entrepreneurial activities within them, but we must not forget those small to medium-sized companies in Japan, and especially today, I think there is a huge opportunity because the K-RETS relationship that I'm hearing that had existed in automotive or other structural vertical industries in Japan is sort of getting a little wobbly, because large corporations, and please correct me if there are representatives from those places, when they go to Asia, China and the rest of Asia to expand, which they are aggressively doing, they don't necessarily take their suppliers that they have traditionally done in the Western world. And because there are enough local Chinese manufacturers that are, can supply to them at their standard. So those mid to small size companies in Japan, which have relied on large corporate sort of big brothers, are sort of left now to figure out on their own how to expand beyond Japan. And I think there is a huge opportunity to tap them and use technology. And some of my colleagues are figuring out the company that use the basically B2B platform to aid those medium to small size companies, which otherwise would not have resources to expand globally, to use the web to really sell their products and services. And we, all of us here, can tap that opportunity to help them. And I think that is a very tangible, and then many of them are very entrepreneurial. They may be family business, but they have very single decision makers or very aggressive second generation managers, and I think there's a huge opportunity there. And then the third one, third sort of opportunities, which I will leave to third floor, but I would like to say that, and then this month is maybe more challenging in terms of organizing because I'm probably less familiar, shame to say, but I think the women in Japan could be organized in some fashion, again, to measurable sort of ways to mobilize the sort of next generation of growth. And to do that, there are some pockets of companies who are doing interesting things, again, using technology. And I wouldn't, for the interest of time, I wouldn't go into that, but if anybody is interested, I'll be happy to talk about it. So thank you.